It is Sleepy Reader, aka Damien, and I am here for the Batman Hush tag. This tag was this tag was created by Tyler, aka Tylox the Mighty, and he invited 12, or I guess 11 people because it's including him, but so a total of 12 of us are tackling the Batman Hush series issue by issue. I was given issue 613 to cover. The last issue, 612, was covered by the comic collector, and he did an excellent job. And coming up after me, the next person in the tag chain will be copy 801. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he has to say. And Tylock said we can do it any way we want. So my way for handling this issue is to tell you the 12 things that jumped out at me that I really liked as I was reading this and rereading this. So I'm gonna give you 12 things about this issue. It's part 6 of the Hush story. And then I may give you a few random other thoughts about Hush overall. So, number one, I loved the opera house setting, which almost the entirety of this issue took place in. And opera is kind of a cliche of what rich people go and do. And I think it kind of, it's a good thing it's a good place for Bruce Wayne to be. And it kind of evokes both the cheesiness of, I can imagine Adam West Batman going to the opera and it being kind of silly and full of snooty rich people. And I can imagine other versions of Batman going to the opera. So and something about its sort of cheesiness and classiness. And opera itself is this over the top, if you look at it certain ways, totally silly theatrical kind of production. So I thought it was really cool that it was set in an opera. This is very small, but I liked the moment where sitting in the opera, what do you call it? The opera box, where the rich people sit up in these opera boxes. Thomas says, "Hush, you two," to Catwoman and Batman, although they are Selina Kyle and Bruce Wayne at this point. So the next thing my number 3 point that I really jumped out at me was seeing the classic Harley Quinn, but drawn by Jim Lee. And I loved the way Jim Lee drew her. It evoked that classic cartoon Harley, but also a sleeker Jim Lee kind of realistic, over-muscled, but realistic kind of superhero world too. And I like the way it brought her in there. And I loved, maybe this should be 13 points, but I'm including this as a point with the Harley. I love the way Jim Lee drew her acrobaticness, her athleticness. And he took the time. It's not easy. It takes a lot of time to draw each figure from a different angle. He took the time to draw all these, in each panel where Harley's jumping around, all these different Harleys showing all her different positions. And that was amazing work by Jim Lee. And it, on a very physical level, gave us a certain kind of Harley that I really loved. I loved when Harley said, "Opera schmopera." Again, back to the opera. That was a perfect Harley Quinn line. You could say it's an obvious line, but it just really worked there. And again, it just brought together that all the different things that opera evokes. the cheesiness of it and the high tonedness and the juxtaposition of Harley Quinn to an opera setting. And you know what? I put in as my 5th point those acrobatic jumps by Harley. So that was my number 5. Take a look at those. Those are pretty amazing. I really, throughout Hush, but in this issue, I love the way Jim Lee approaches a flashback. He adopts a very different style, which gives us a really strong sense of memory, the past, kind of the haziness of memory. Memory exists a bit in a fog, so excellent choice. Great choice in terms of the coloring too and everything. So fantastically well done the way Jim Lee and the rest of his artistic crew, the colorist and inker, did that flashback. I love that the opera audience thinks that all of this big fight with Harley and Catwoman and Batman is and all the henchmen is part of the performance, and they applaud. They give it an ovation. That is so great. Again, kind of playing with the jokiness of Batman while in a serious story, and I just love that quality. I love the panel of this really intense panel of Batman just saying no. I just thought that was it was an awesome Batman moment, the way it was drawn and the timing of it and everything. This whole issue has great timing, great pacing and everything. In its nonstop action with characterization and well paced. I also loved when the Joker says, "Now that's how you make an entrance." That's spoiling the end of the comic, right? I think it's the final page of the comic and final panel. He says, "Now that's how you make an entrance." And it makes me realize, which is my number 10 point, is after reading that, realizing this whole thing kind of points out how Batman is a kind of theater. There's all these theatrical traditions with recurring characters and scenes played out on stage that the audience always expects certain kinds of scenes, but you have to find new ways to do it. And everything, most of the action in this issue took place on a stage, but it also just brought to mind that feeling of all of Batman's bigger adventures are theatrical. I noticed how wonderful the flow from villain to villain is. And that's probably true of the whole series. But we go from Harley Quinn to the Joker. Again, like I was saying about how great the timing of the action and everything is here. It's also done to sort of the perfect sort of modern model of how comics unfold is the unfolding of the reveal from one villain to the next, from Harley Quinn to Joker. So that was great. And I overall like the story really keeps us on our toes in the same token, really, but it's my 12th point, how the story keeps us on our toes for trying to figure out who is the mastermind behind the whole mystery. And the real villain of it is right under our noses, but I certainly didn't figure it out the first time I read it. I'm not sure how... the first time I read it was in trade. I wish I had been there when the single issues were coming out and seeing what that experience was monthly. When you have quite a bit of time, there's a difference when you read things in trade or you read them coming out monthly and you have a 4 weeks between each chapter. Sometimes certain aspects of the story percolate through your mind. So maybe if I wasn't reading it, I don't know if I was reading it in individual issues, if I would have keyed into the clues of the mystery. But it's great seeing all the clues once I already know the story and I'm rereading it. Overall, Hush, I think, would be if someone said what Batman would be the best Batman to read to get into Batman, I would either say Batman Year One by Frank Miller, which is truly my favorite Batman that I can think of. But I might recommend Hush, and it might be better rather than going into Batman's origin right away, focusing on that, or his early days, focus on his whole gallery of rogues. It's the perfect, the trade of it, or the trades, because I have 2 trades, is the perfect way to get the feel of the whole of Batman's world. And it would, if you want to start reading modern Batman comics, I think it'd be a great thing to start because it's one that I think all current Batman writers to some degree have in the back of their mind too. And I think, but I'm no expert, that this may be Jim Lee's finest work. I am not of the Jim Lee generation in the sense that I was not a kid when I first encountered Jim Lee, and I would have been in, probably my late 30s or almost 40 when this came out. But so for me, for some people, Jim Lee was the best artist or the most exciting superhero artist of the time when they started getting really excited about comics, and I don't have that. For me, it would be Neil Adams and Jim Steranko. But and so I never totally got into Jim Lee's artwork. I appreciated it from a distance, let's say. I was less into superheroes when he was making his big splash. That was more of a Vertigo period for me, let's say. But I feel like on this reread, I'm finally really getting into Jim Lee, and he gives the fans what they want, right? The big heroic moments and the excitement of superheroes. And in Hush, it's done with this perfectly paced, over the top, but fun roller coaster ride story for 12 issues straight. So I think it, to my knowledge, it's like the greatest Jim Lee story that I know of, and art. So there's a lot of fun. Thank you, Tylox, and let's talk about Batman again somewhere else.